Hello and welcome to the Rugby Call. I'm Nathan Middleton and delighted to say I'm joined today by the former England Rugby flanker James Haskell, the Red Roses fullback Ellie Kildunne and the World Rugby referee Wayne Barnes. We're going to focus on the rugby chat, of course, in just a second and our two incredible rugby charities, Restarts and the Injured Players Foundation. But first, hello to everyone. I'm going to go around to my screen first. So first is Ellie Kildunne. Ellie, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. I'm good. Are you okay?
All good, all good. James,
Good.
Ask, how are you?
Delightful. Working hard, trying to keep myself amused, training a new puppy, trying to keep the puppy and my wife happy. Always difficult, always challenging, but I'm having a good go at it.
We might get some puppy interruptions during the call, I hear.
Yeah, potentially. He's actually sitting at my feet at the moment. Because we're sort of giving him proper food, like raw food and all this kind of stuff. The dog trainer's giving us actual like chicken's feet, and it's like they're the rankest set of treats. Like the other day, he had a proper cow's ear that was like black, furry, and was walking around with it like it was the best thing in sliced bread. And he turned his back, and I was like, "I'm not having that." Lobbed it in the bin. It stunk, but it was like still black and furry. It was amazing.
Well, it's quite interesting, Hask. Since lockdown, my wife's vegetarian, so I haven't had any meat at home. So the idea of some chicken feet sounds good to me. So send them across, mate. Send them across.
Oh, Barnsley, if you look, Nigel Owens once sold me a care package of Welsh cakes and a yellow card, just because he said, give me so many that I might as well keep it. If you need to tap out SOS, I will send you a meat parcel that you can eat, like some sort of snacks where you can go, I'm just going to go to the garden, I've got to focus on some games, and then just eat it, because there's no way you should be doing that. I thought you were looking tired.
No, perfect, mate. Get them across. Get those chicken feet and some those meat snacks across to me.
Well, all dog interruptions very much welcome on this England Rugby Call, and very good afternoon to Wayne Barnes as well. How are you doing, Wayne, apart from lacking in meat products during your life at the moment?
I'm great. I was up in Scotland this weekend for the Scotland-France, and now I'm going straight back up north for Newcastle on Friday for a northern derby between Newcastle and Sale. So it's great to have the Premiership back. I think I had about 6 days as an off-season. So, always enjoyable to rest, relax, and prepare for yourself for the new season. 31st of October was my last game in the Six Nations of last year. And then my first pre-season game was Newcastle versus Ealing on the week after. So, perfect time to recover and recuperate.
And imagine having to spend your 6 days off time in the Forest of Dean. It doesn't get better than that.
Nothing wrong with the Forest of Dean. Rugby Heartland. One day we'll get you down there for my charity game, Hask.
Yeah, I might become like team manager or something like that.
Well, mate, you're not good enough to play anymore.
This is very true. This is why I'm talking about injured players.
We're going to talk about that in just a second, and more rugby chat, of course. But first, just our two rugby charities, Restarts and the Injured Players Foundation. Restarts is the official charity of the Rugby Players Association. It supports female and male professional rugby players in England during and after their rugby career who are facing serious injury, illness, or hardship. The charity helps current and former players by providing emotional, financial, medical, and practical support. The Injured Players Foundation, meanwhile, is the official charity of the Rugby Football Union and supports rugby players at any level and any age who have sustained a catastrophic spinal cord or traumatic brain injury whilst playing rugby in England. The IPF supports injured players through recovery, rehabilitation, and the rest of their lives. And the reason why James, Ellie and Wayne have all donated their time today is so hopefully you can donate something towards these worthy causes. And to make a donation of up to £20, you can please text Rugby Call, that's all one word, Rugby Call, plus your donation amount to 70085. Each text will cost you your donation amount plus one standard message. All the information should be on screen wherever you're watching us. We can find more in the bio. For example, if you wanted to donate £10, you could text Rugby Call, all one word, space 10 to 70085. So more rugby chat in first and second. But James, you joined the board of trustees at Restart early this year. Just tell us a bit more about why you wanted to join and the influence you're hoping to have.
Yeah, I'd always supported Restart as a player, right? It's one of those things where they come to the club and they say, listen, we're going to wear red T-shirts, there's Restart on this weekend. It helps players in a multitude of different ways. Do you want to get behind it? You say, yeah. Because everybody in rugby's good people. They just do it, right? They do it without thinking. Because being a professional sportsman involves being inherently quite selfish, and a lot of rugby players are no different. And unless it affects you, you're not really ever focused on it. You know, until a house is burning down, you then wish you had house insurance and all these little pieces. And the sage advice that people give you. And Restart, I discovered, you know, I knew they were doing a great job, but I had no idea the level that they were going to help players, you know, taking the sort of education side and restarting and players in, you know, new careers and stuff is a given. But what I didn't realise is the amount of work they're doing on mental health. And I know this is kind of, the zeitgeist is always about mental health now, and it's what everybody's talking about. But to be honest with you, you know, even if we have a privileged job in playing something we love and a sport, we're not exempt from mental health issues. And the biggest killer of men under 40 is suicide. And we obviously, both in the female game and the male game, we look after and help people with, for example, an anonymous hotline, which people can call up when they're having issues and seek advice. And we offer counselling sessions. And we've probably helped about 50 or 60 players, some of which we've stopped from doing stuff, you know, pretty silly, i.e. taking their own lives. And we've had to step in a number of occasions. There's people reaching out all the time. And obviously the world is kind of falling apart, and there are lots of people in very difficult situations, and context is always important with these things. You know, for me, my experience of COVID is different from somebody else's, but my experience of life is different from other people's. And there's lots of men and women out there who have issues, who are struggling, and Restart provides that support. And it costs about £70,000-80,000 a year in kind of counselling and therapy, and you know, they work with some great partners to help fund that. But actually, because we haven't had our usual fundraising and stuff, and the RPA awards, which we did virtually, which was great, but we haven't had the events, there's no money left to provide this service at the moment. And we're pretty much in a very dire situation. You know, we've probably got only a couple of months of support left to be able to help players. And obviously the mental health is probably the most prevalent. And, you know, they're also there to help, you know, people like Michael Fatialofa with his initial neck injury, and then obviously providing the funding and support for that. And while good money is raised, the Restart get absolutely no funding from the RFU or the clubs. So, you know, all these players are there giving their bodies and lives for them. And, you know, they get a little bit of money donated from individual benefactors and sport events, but nothing. The clubs don't help at all. And to be honest with you, you know, the players' cognitive well-being and mental health is paramount for so many reasons. So as soon as I found out this, I was like, do you know what? It's all well and good wearing a T-shirt once when I was playing, but I wanted to get involved. You know, Ed Jackson was another one of the trustees who's kind of a shining light, an example of somebody that can deal with a pretty tough situation. And, you know, he's now, I think he did 22 marathons in something like 10 days or something mad the other day. And his recovery is incredible. Obviously, Ugo Monnier, who's a fantastic sportsman and spokesperson for so many reasons. And I basically said to Ed, listen, what's the commitment? And we discussed it, and I just felt that I could make a difference and try to raise some awareness. And Restarted doing, as I said, some brilliant work, but we're in a bit of a tough spot. So I think it's quite prevalent to raise some real awareness.
Ellie, obviously you're a current player. What Restart does for rugby players, kind of past and present, how important is it to have that, I guess, support network that, you know, if you or players that you know could just reach out and be able to do something with it?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think, as everyone kind of knows anyway, you play better when you're feeling good and you're feeling happy. And especially, I think, as a younger player, it's really important to know the support that you've got on and off the pitch, and that there is people there to support you and to make sure that things can run as smoothly upstairs, as well as being able to, you know, perform well on the pitch as well. And I think it's really important, as James is saying, to keep Restart going and to kind of allow people to use it as much as they can do. I played on or warmed up in the shirt a couple of times, and I've been part of conversations with similar to this, talking about it and talking to girls that are involved with it much more than what I am. And I can't agree enough with how important it is to be like part of it and to keep the support going, really.
And Wayne, I know you've been helping out with the Injured Players Foundation as well, getting involved in some of their social activity and speaking to them, a few Q&As. Just talk to us about that and why you feel the need to give back.
Yeah, I just think on the restart point as well, and Hask is just got there, getting closer to retirement. Ellie's nowhere near retirement, she's just at the start of a wonderful career. But as someone who's getting towards the end, you realise that need for support at the end of your career. What is next? Someone who's worked for the RFU since 2005, it's quite frightening, I need that support afterwards. Referees are in a similar boat. They've dedicated their life to something they love. They've given a lot to the sport, and just to have that kind of bit of support afterwards is pretty special and very much needed. And then obviously the Injured Players Foundation. Like during lockdown, we've all had those challenges, and we've all had those those dark moments when you think, when are we going to come out of this? This is a real struggle, trying to juggle work, trying to juggle homeschooling, just not seeing family. And so I was asked to join one of the IPF kind of online discussions, and the energy and the enthusiasm some of the ex-players brought, and I'll tell you what, they've got an opinion, Nathan. So it was a bit of a Q&A and my chance to hear about what they've been up to, and then to ask me some questions. But oh my goodness, they're rugby noses as well. They knew everything about every game I'd ever refereed. They were highly critical of me, talking about this, decisions I'd given in the 2009 Premiership final against their team. I'm like, fellas, I thought this was meant to, relationship building between players and referees. They're like, no, we want to talk about that forward pass, mate. So they were great to get involved with. And one thing I was glad at, the majority of them came from England, is that I'd never refereed England, because some of the memories that they had of some of the referees who they said screwed over England, they were like, and what about him? Can you give me his number, because we want to ring him up? It was, some really great interactions with there, and a real decent bunch, and and hope to be able to do them, in person, and catch up with a few of them at Twickenham once we get the fans in the stadium again.
So when you're talking about the relationship between players and referees there, let's first get a take on what it was like to referee James Haskell during his playing days, and we'll get Haskell's view on you during, well, you are still during your reffing days, but what was it like being on the pitch with Hask?
Well, I always enjoyed characters of the game, and that's why, I'm just reading this book at the moment. Just a character I really enjoyed and still enjoy refereeing. And then there was Haskell. I'm afraid, and I was looking back, Hask. My first Premiership final was your first Premiership kind of final appearance as well, 2008. I was about 17 and James would have been about 16 playing for Wasps. And there was that fantastic back row at Wasps End of Delalio, Rees and Haskell. And Tom Rees went on to become a doctor. His career obviously finished early. Such a shame, such a talented player. We got Delalio went on to be, a World Cup. Well, he was a World Cup winner at that point. Now an icon of the game, and then there was James. But he always had an opinion, did Hask, and he'd always tell you about it. So
James, your thoughts, your memories on being refereed by Wayne Barnes?
Yeah, look, I'm going to go for a different tact for Barnsley, because I've always had the utmost respect for him. I think he was one of my favourite referees. I like characters. I think refereeing is a difficult job. I think it's been made even more difficult these days when you used to be judged in the pub, and that was it. Now you are on the same level of scrutiny as players, and I think that some people handle pressure differently, and I think some people are kind of almost scared of that. But Barnsley was able to maintain a personality and have confidence in his convictions and be able to be himself, which I thought was brilliant. You know, he was able to have a personality. He wasn't pressured. There's so many referees, when the pressure came on, they resort to like death stares or wouldn't be able to have a dialogue or wouldn't be able to control. You know, it's difficult. You've got two captains, you've got, 23 players, on each side with opinions. You've got fourth officials, you've got the crowd, but to have confidence, to be able to have a dialogue, to be able to have a conversation was brilliant. And I really enjoyed him. Nigel Owens again was another guy that I always got on well with. But I always enjoyed Barnes, and I have utmost respect for him. The fact he looked like a naughty schoolboy and somebody that I probably would have put his head down the toilet at school. He was always, because also if you know about him, how intelligent he is, how successful he is as well at the other stuff, it was really nice. And yeah, he was always very fair, always very honest. I think you could, when he came into the change room, you could have a joke with him, you could have a laugh with him, but he'd also go, do you know what? I don't agree, or I do agree. I remember one of the funniest things was, though, I was playing against, it was Leicester versus Wasps at the Rico, and Jamie Gibson, who, we're not necessarily cut from the same cloth, and he was playing for Leicester at the time, and obviously his sole job was to razz me up, and was pulling my scrum cap off, tackling me late, trying to razz me up, and I think something happened, and I think I ended up belting him, not with a fist, and I said to Barnes, you've got to look at this. They're hitting me off 20 feet off the ball, and everything else. Because I barely understood the laws at the best of times, so I never felt like I was able to, to tell him his job. But I would say, actually, do you know what? There's a few little infringements. Could you look at it and let me know? I was always very respectful. Yes, sir. No, sir. And I said to him, you've got to look at this, Barnes. He's hit me off the ball. He's cleared me out. Barnes said, no, well, I've looked at it. He hasn't. I said, listen, if you don't sort him out, I'm going to fill him in. And Barnes was like, whoa. In the middle of the game, he's like, you can't do that. You can't take law. I was like, I'm telling you, he's going to get it. He's like, you can't. And we had sort of had this awkward moment where I was literally telling him, if he doesn't sort it out, I'm going to fill him in. Whereby I slightly lost my head. So that was quite funny. But no, he was always brilliant. And I always enjoyed it. Yeah, he's like most referees, as I'm the most carded ever England player. I mean, he hasn't obviously refereed against England, but he's had a good go at me at Premiership. So I'm pretty happy with that.
We've all mentioned kind of the mental health aspect, particularly around Restart and the IPL. If you've just focused on you, obviously you've been a professional athlete in both 7s and 15s and came in from very early on, sort of 18 years old, I think you made your England debut. Yeah. What's that been like, I guess, kind of in the modern world with, social media platforms that there are, the amount of TV coverage now on the Red Roses is huge. So the mental aspect of, I guess, just focusing on your performance, as well as a lot of off-field media distractions that you have to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. I think as when I first came in, I mean, I was still at college, and there was kind of the balance of being a professional athlete and being a student, like all my friends were, and there was definitely a difference between how I acted and how they acted, especially at Hartpury as well. People just love to have a good time, and I'd be in for a couple of days and then out for a week or so, and there was a lot of pressure with that. And then soon came social media around that time, because everyone would say, oh, A-level student comes in and is scoring in each game and stuff, and straight away there was a certain amount of pressure that came on the social media, because suddenly I was faced with all the really good comments and then some comments that were more negative, and I'd find myself sometimes looking for the hate comments as such, as much as there wasn't many, but I think already even looking at that at 17, 18 years old is something that I think other people would do as well. Just because the amount of time that you spend on social media, whether, it's late at night and you sat in bed on Instagram, or just flicking through Twitter, or even now TikTok or whatever it is, more people are using social media. So definitely there's more pressure with that. More recently, I think I found a difference because there's not as much coverage in 7s. So when I was away at 7s, I was injured for quite a bit of that period. So I was in there for about 2 years, and I only had a handful of caps because most of the time I stood on the sideline. And there was a lot of comments around, oh, where's Ellie gone? She's disappeared. Has she stopped playing rugby? And we didn't get many pictures to my Instagram. I didn't have many like rugby photos or anything like that. So coming back into the 15s, I think suddenly I put pressure on myself to kind of slot in the position that I left, if not better, because I wanted to come and not just be hidden, but to be like the best player I can be, and for everyone to view me as that as well. So off field, I mean, straight away, there's interviews left, right, and centre that I haven't had to do in a couple of years, and I think not saying the right things, but not saying the wrong things is probably the thing that, like, there is a bit of like thought that goes into it. But overall, I think you go through patches of tougher times, especially being a bit younger. You know, you're coming into a team that is quite well established, and ultimately, you know, you need to be the creme de la creme, because you come in and there's going to be players that are a lot older that you're taking their shirt. So there's that it does get onto your back a bit. And I found, so I'm a student as well, so I study at university as well, and finding that time to balance is something, as well as friends, like as well as the outside part of rugby and having to travel between club and England. At the moment, I'm still getting used to. I went from like a centralised sevens where everything was happening there to suddenly spending all the time in very different places. So there is that pressure, but what has helped is having so many different people to talk to when I have found it hard, whether that be coaches or peers.
And James, if your experiences now, you are kind of, I know you're still inside rugby as in a media capacity, but now you've gone from the outside, from playing, your experiences on, I guess, mental health and the way that the players speak about it during your playing days to now, particularly in your role with Restart.
Yeah, look, I think one of the most important aspects is actually under-focused on in sport in general, but especially in rugby, is the mental side of it. You know, if I tell a young player or a person, do you know what, if you buy these trainers, you're going to run a little bit faster. If you eat this food, you're going to feel better. If you take this supplement, you're going to look bigger. They'll do it. If I said to someone, do you know what, you could sit down and have absolutely no mental health issues, no confidence issues, I could improve your performance, I could sort out your preparation, but you need to go and speak to a sports psychologist or speak to a hypnotherapist or whatever. If you visualize, if you've got concerns about making mistakes and nerves, I could take those away. People don't do it. You know, if you asked me when I first started playing in a changing room of 30 blokes, put your hand up and said, who's speaking to psychologists? There'd be me and probably one of the players who was eating glue or eating studs or whatever, or, that was it. That was it. And it was seen as if you actually had mental health issues, you had to go, if you didn't have specific mental health issues, you wouldn't speak to somebody. Now, I think there's a lot more dialogue, around that, but I still think it's being neglected. And I think, exactly what Ellie was saying, it's a human trait to go and seek out negative stuff. You could have 100 positive things said about yourself, but all you'll remember is a negative thing. I had, for all my bravado and stuff, I suffered from huge self-confidence issues my entire career, why I started seeing psychologists in the first place. And I did what she did, I went and looked on a WASP forum once after my first game, and it was the worst experience of my life. And it's a form of self-harm, bizarrely, that kind of stuff. And I think now we're getting to a point where we are talking more about it, but there's still a stigma attached to it. I think, for example, this 24-hour sort of confidential helpline that Restart are doing. There's 50 players who have picked it up, per season on average, and reached out and spoken to them. But I know way more who haven't. Who even just can't deal with the scrutiny on social media. As I said about Wayne, people used to make comments in pubs. Now people are sharing it. And I think one of the worst inventions for humanity was social media. Yes, there's lots of positive sharing and learning and all this other stuff, but actually I think we could have done without it. And for me, mental health is integral, and you need to see it alongside, your diet, your equipment, everything else. It's part of you. It's an area of improvement. And just things like feeling motivated, that's great, but motivated is such a transitory feeling. You need to have mental fortitude. So when you don't feel motivated, you actually are able to play. When you do have a terrible game, you do make an error and everybody's blaming you and coming at you and you're having sort of a trial by social media. How do you handle that? And I think young players are getting better at it, but I also think that they are having to go through a lot more. And people are going through a lot more. And I think, you kind of the people who talk about mental health as if, 40 years ago, there's no such thing as mental health. People in, less privileged countries don't get mental health issues and have all this kind of stuff. Yes, but we now have about 50 things in our lives more so that can affect you more than anything. There's about 100 ways of making contact with people. There's 100 ways of getting criticized. There's 100 ways of sharing negativity. And for players, I think it's really important for so many areas, for performance, for happiness, for, improvement in ability. There are a multitude of things, and it's multifaceted. And I think we need to understand that, both as members of the public who are watching this, but also sports people and men and women not being frightened to share. And women are much more emotionally in tune and able to voice stuff. Obviously, sadly, Christophe Dominici, who I was coached at Stade Francais, committed suicide, and I said to my wife, I said, did you know that it's the biggest killer of men under 40? And, it's such a surprise. And she went, no, it's not. I went, what do you mean? She went, well, none of you speak up or share anything about your emotions. You ask everyone how you're feeling. Everyone goes, fine. And you're like, actually, I'm not fine. And I think we've got to break that. And I think we've got to be open, and being open and honest about emotions is not a sign of weakness, and I think that's something we've got to really consider.
I think that's really interesting, Nathan, just listening to Ellie and James when my Wi-Fi wasn't falling off because of my daughter doing her ballet, is that it's important that people like Ellie and James talk to their peers and talk to their teammates and say, and be real role models, because it's definitely something that we've experienced in the refereeing front, is if the senior guys, the people who have been around for an age, the senior referees in a group are sitting back saying everything's fine and not explaining that, geez, yes, there's some real difficult times out there when everyone's having a crack at you. But if the senior guys and girls don't do it, then it's not going to be the person who's only just started refereeing in the Premiership or an international kind of stage who's going to say, well, actually, I feel a bit awkward, because it needs to become the norm. And so to get ambassadors like we've got on the call today, with Ellie and Hask, people will feel more comfortable about it. And I definitely know that we've seen that from a refereeing point, that people are now willing to put their hands up and saying, look, I find social media a real drag on me, How do I deal with it? How do I stop, typing my name into Google and seeing what comes up? Because I can guarantee you, as a referee, nothing positive is going to be coming up when you write in Wayne Barnes. My
question for you, Wayne, was going to be, but as in, we've heard it from a player's perspective. I mean, I think we'd all agree, referee is probably a pretty thankless task. If you do your job, you're just going to be like, well, that's your job. You're a referee. So in an age of social media, there's still obviously newspaper columns. You've kind of pushed yourself out a little bit and done some really interesting videos on explaining referee things now on Twitter. How do you switch off after a game, after a bad review, or how do you? Is it family? Is it how do you mentally switch yourself off from that negativity?
I definitely think the older you get, the more comfortable you get in your own skin. You accept who you are. You accept that some people out there aren't going to like you. You just have to accept that. Particularly, I'm a referee and I'm a lawyer, Nathan, so I'm never going to be bloody popular, am I? Come on. And before you ask, yes, I was bullied as a child. Yes. You just have to accept that. So you accept that, but also you put people around you who you trust, whether it's your coach, whether it's your psychologist, whether it's your wife, your partner, your husband. You put people around you whose opinions actually matter. Now, the opinions on here, do they really matter? That someone thinks I've had a crap game up in Scotland, that someone's actually, sent a message saying, Barnes, we thought you got 14 decisions wrong against team X or Y. Does that matter? What matters is what the players, the coaches, and my fellow referees think of my performance. That's what really matters. And then it's about being really comfortable at home and really appreciating, the fun things in life, and the things that matter to me are my family, and my friends, and if I'm happy in those two bits, it's not going to be a bad week.
I would say as well, it is interesting because I agree with everything Wayne's saying. And a lot of people say, you hear people say, I don't care. People say, I don't care. Everybody, you always care. But exactly what Wayne said is that the relationship capital of good people around you is what's valuable. Because, why would you open yourself up for feedback? Why would you get refereeing tips from a non-referee? You should always, if 100 people are calling you an idiot, you might have to look at yourself. Like, you can't go through life having no self-awareness. But if you've got enough awareness to understand that, you're going to be open to criticism, but actually if your peers and your people say, you've done a good job, or this needs to work on, you have to be open-minded to take it on. But it's exactly right. You never go fishing and ask for advice. It's like a lot of players, they go and ask their dads. Like I was, you want to make my dad proud. What do you think, Dad? And it's like, what qualifies my dad to give me any more advice than anyone else? He's just watching the game. Like, was he a professional? Does he know what he's talking about? Does he know the game plan? What's he building it on? All he sees, like most fans see, are the big error, the big carry. Oh, so-and-so's had a great game because he scored 2 tries. Well, I've actually seen him miss 10 tackles, was late to 6 rucks and didn't do that. Barnsley misses something in the game, like a forward pass, but actually the way he kept the game flowing, the way he dealt with those players, the way he diffused stuff, the fact that he allowed, to manage the tackle area. If you look at how he did it, these people it's never thought about. And I think it is interesting about referees, because I had to stand up for one of your colleagues. I can't remember who it was, but I remember during a trial by social media, got thrown under the bus by somebody. And I'm very much like, I'm not into virtue signaling. I'm not like a freedom fighter looking for the next thing to get behind. But I'm like, I believe in certain things and common sense. And I remember seeing like World Rugby threw under a colleague of Wayne's under the bus, and I was like, no, it's not fair. It's not right. The guy's doing his job, and we're all human. And I think we all suffer from that in sport. And I think people don't appreciate it, and they also think because you're in the public eye, well, it's okay. You've asked for it. You took the hello deal. You took that money. You took that sponsorship. So you deserve to get it. It's like, no. Nobody deserves to get hounded. You haven't made a deal with the devil, so you don't get to do it. And I think we've got to break this barrier. And my wife and I talked about on our podcast about some health issues around relationships. And some bloke wrote, yeah, but you guys haven't had any normal people on. I was like, what do you mean normal? Well, and I was like, we're all normal people. We're the same. This is why it's so funny, the world of celebrity and stuff, where we put people on pedestals and you find out, you know what? They do laugh, they do cry, they have bad days. It's when you see a celebrity lose it with somebody, they're like, oh my God, did you see so-and-so were angry? It's like, yeah, we all get angry. We all have bad days. We all wake up. I sit in this chair the whole time and do podcasts, and sometimes I look around going, the hell am I doing? Like, what, we have these moments, and I think it's really important. Like I said, Wayne, so we break down these boundaries, and even guys in that England team who played on the weekend in both the Red Roses and the men's side have good days and bad days. Just because they have a great game, what goes on behind those closed doors, you never know.
I think as well on that point, I think with the saying that it's normal people as well, there was a piece that one of the girls did at Wasps, because it's not professional, and at the club we've got people that are neuroscientists and teachers and engineers and just all these different jobs, and you don't realise that sometimes they might come to training and they might be a bit snappy, but then you got to remember they might have been at school teaching, and one of the kids have just been horrible all day, because you kind of forget there's that there is that normal side of it. And I think in women's rugby a lot, I mean, after the game, as much as we we won the autumn internationals and we've been made number one in the world and stuff, there's still people saying how poor the women's game is and how we shouldn't be put anywhere near the men and things. And it's that mental side of it it's just draining. It's really draining, because it's like we train just as hard. There's girls that put so much time and effort in a job that they do 9 till 5 and then go to training after. And the mental battle that they must be going through to try switch off from one to go into another must be incredible. And that's the whole like normal side of it, because people may just see us in the weekend and just think, oh yeah, okay, she had a bad performance, or yeah, she played quite well. But really, like there is all the other stuff going on as well.
So you've all kind of given examples there and things you've gone through and things you have to deal with. So if I could get something from you all about how you then deal with it. So how, I know Wayne sort of asked how you switch off, but Ellie, if you can just go back to you, I guess, 2020 for everyone has been COVID, there's been lockdowns, was there, did you make yourself go out for a run? Was it, getting yourself a dog? Like how did you bring positivity to your life through all those mental challenges that you've said before about social media and everyone day to day at the moment has got mental challenges. So what kind of gets you through the days and the weeks, and particularly this year?
Yeah, well, the first lockdown, I had the opportunity to go to my family home up in Yorkshire, and I haven't been able to go there for longer than a week since I was 15, because I went to Hartpury when I was 16. So spent a lot of time up there just in the countryside, spending time with my brother and my mum and my dad was really nice, and it was a really good way to kind of switch off, because it felt like I was a kid again. And I could do all them things. This lockdown, I've been fortunate enough to carry on training, and I mean, for a couple of weeks of it, we've been away, but this whole lockdown has been that, as much as it's not really a switch off from rugby, it's just been a refocus and a shift from focusing on to one competition being the Olympics to suddenly being put into a position where I might have to refocus into something else. So it was Wasps, and then I was given the opportunity with England again, and it was just really putting everything I can do into that. So much off the pitch, I started making videos and saying, I keep saying to everyone, I'm going to make a vlog, and I'm going to really hammer in on that. I keep putting polls on my Instagram and getting everyone to vote and stuff. And every time I go to do it, I like half finish. I've got about 7 half finished videos on my laptop that I just haven't got through. And I mean, as much as I asked my mum for a dog, I mean, she just keeps on saying no at the moment. She says I'm too young, and the landlord won't allow it. So maybe next year, she said, if we win the World Cup, she'll get me a dog. So hopefully COVID won't be a thing then, but hopefully I'll have a dog by that point as well.
James, you have got a dog, which I assume is just not just your mental health, but just joy in your life. But just, I guess, as well as a dog, some other things that you mentioned earlier, you spend a lot of time in that room, sat doing podcasts and a lot of online things. So how do you stay positive during the day?
Well, it's actually interesting because I tried to get a dog under the guise of one of those self-help dogs, the ones where you're like having a bit of a sad day and they bring them in and they talk to them. I don't know there's actually a specific name for them. They're normally like
on the plane, can't you, where they kind of, if you're really scared of flying, that sort of dog.
They've got a jacket and they're like, help anxious people. I tried to say to my wife, can I get one? She was like, you're always angry. I said, well, because people are always coming at me. So if I had a nice little dog to stroke, I'd calm down. I'd probably stroke it bald. But
emotional support dog is what you're looking for.
An emotional support dog, but she wouldn't buy that. But actually, my wife was very much like anti-dogs. She was like, I don't understand dog people. This, I don't want it. We've had this dog a week. She's turned into mental dog lady, like mad dog lady. In terms of like, we were supposed to put it to bed the other night, and I was like, come on, and I asked it to wake up, and she went, no, shh. Bertie, I was like whispering to it as if I was going to wake it up too loud. I was like, you've lost the plot. But in terms of like the positivity side, I think there was one time in the first sort of lockdown where I had a moment where I sat here and I was like, all of my stuff is public facing. So the DJing, the afternoon speaking, the corporate speaking, all this kind of stuff was the filming for different people and stuff, and TV shows and stuff was all public. Without that, what was I about? And I actually got back to really simple things of routine. So routine is something that everybody needs and doesn't realize that, so what I did is I made sure that I woke up every day, set my alarm, woke up, went and trained, whether that was in the garage or just in the house, ate my food, and broke my day down to different areas. So I basically had a purpose, set myself an hour for emails. And then, do you know what? I thought to myself, this is a great opportunity to do stuff that I'd never done before. So I started doing live DJ streams, a bit like Ellie, that I was like, a bit, I wanted to do it, but I didn't really do it. And the problem is, if you can be like a couple of things in life. You can be like the sniper, waiting for the perfect shot, the perfect video, the perfect moment. Or conversely, you could do like a minigun and spray everything. Or you can fire a few shots and see how you get on. And the live DJ stuff, I taught myself to do it. I'm a big techno keno anyway. You know, I got a camera, I started streaming, I started doing live streams, and I really enjoyed that. And then I said to my wife, I wanted to set up a podcast with her. She's like, what are you talking about? We said, well, let's talk about, you know, relationships and couples and sex, all this kind of stuff. That's, you know, because people always say couple goals, bizarrely, but we're not. You know, we fight like cats and dogs. We have problems like everybody has. But this perception through social media is because nobody ever posts a bad photo. That's something else to remember. Nobody really ever goes, I look hanging, here's a photo, here's a terrible meal I had at a Harvester, let's have a photo. They're going to go, wait, no, I'm in Dubai having Nobu, or look at my filthy Peugeot 206 car. And they're like, no, this is my Ferrari. So people forget that. You're selling a dream the whole time. So we wanted to dispel that myth. And I found that by doing that, and basically I applied for some online courses, and I was like, do you know what? I split everything in my life down to little incremental areas. So diet, make sure I woke up, had my breakfast, looked after that, wanted to stay in shape during this lockdown. Training, okay, let's have a plan. I want to work on my mobility. Mental side of it, okay, let's do some courses, let's read a little bit more. Creativity. And basically, every day I was like 1% better in each of those. And by the end of the lockdown, I came out of it all right. But that's not to say I didn't have a meltdown halfway through. And my wife was great. And this comes back to what Wayne said about good people around you. She got the notebook out and she said, right, listen, how do you make money? What do you do? What do you enjoy? And we sat down and she was like, oh, actually, do you know what? This podcast is going to help this, and this is going to help this. And I suddenly felt better. And being quite simple-minded, all she had to say was a few words. And I was like, back on. She wanted to have an hour chat, but I was like, no. You've got me back on track. We're okay. She's like, no, but we haven't talked enough. I was like, no, we're fine. So yeah, that's what I do. And I think, you know, I spoke to my psychologist through this period of time. Started to work with a couple of different people, and just I'd call them up and do like a Zoom call, and they'd be like, "How's your week been?" And you just vent. I was a venter. I was like, "Well, this has happened. This has happened. This has happened. This has happened. You know, what do you think about this?" And then after an hour, I was like, "Do you know what? I feel better. I'm back. Let's go again."
And Wayne, finally, your tips for positivity all round. We've heard from Ellie and James.
Well, my wife Polly, Haskell's already mentioned a lot of the kind of restart fundraisers are big corporate events. She's involved in big corporate events and looking after charities at her firm Fireball, and so she's been massively affected by this. So I've been hugely impressed by her. First of all, she retrained as a Pilates instructor. So she started off by, you know, doing some lessons with her friends. And then, you know, her friends invited friends. And now, you know, 4 or 5 times a week on a 6:30 in the morning. So, you know, I've not set my alarm for that early yet, She's downstairs doing a Pilates lesson and loving it. You know, she's from a dance background. So she's really engaged in that again. You know, we hope that we see that corporate sector back again. Soon, you know, I think we all are desperate to get out there and see people again and speak with people again. But I've been so impressed with how, you know, she's, you know, faced that adversity. And it's starting to think about, you know, ways of interacting with people. So she's helped me set up. I'm back on Twitter after about 15 years of being off it. So hopefully I can help kind of explain, which is a complex game at times, you know, throw the book, you know, hashtag, I think that's how you pronounce it. As you can tell, I'm all over this social media. Ellie and James, you can tell, and hashtag throw the book, and he'll tell, you know, give James some tips around how he should have played the game. And also like just little things around getting out, you know, having some lovely walks around the Surrey Hills. I live in Twickenham. I know Ellie's just around the corner in Hampton. You know, you tend to stay at Richmond Park or you go up to Bushy Park, but some friends said, look, get down to the Surrey Hills. So we've had some lovely walks around the Surrey Hills, get that exercise. We've done some things as referees as well, believe it or not. Us refs get on all right, you know, we're the only people who talk to each other. We've had some like virtual wine tasting. We had Andrew Sheridan, the ex-prop from, you would have played with him. He's a big wine kind of buff down in the south of France. We had Skalkberger all sending us kind of advice on wine tasting. So we've done a few virtual wine tastings, you know, just anything to keep us engaged and active. And, you know, as I think as Has said, you know, that idea as well of just sitting back and saying, what do I enjoy? What, you know, or as Has said, what makes me money? You know, what do I really want to do? You know, and you know, some of those things that we've been able to do in lockdown, it's just been nice, a nice refresh. And now, you know, the last 3 or 4 weeks since the Premiership's been back up and running, you know, it's back a bit to normality. We're still over at Twickenham. We're still training as a group. And it's great to see, you know, all the familiar faces of the Premiership referees. And, you know, now the international window started again. We're trekking around the country. We've been to France, stayed in a hotel, went to Italy, stayed in a hotel, went to Scotland, stayed in a hotel. I haven't seen any of the cities, but we've seen some really nice hotels in different cities. So we're back to some normality, but we all want it back to normal. We want to be out there. We want to see the Red Roses at Twickenham. We want Hass to be on the sideline talking about the games at Twickenham, and I want to be running around the middle of the park at Twickenham as well.
So some positive messages there. The reason, of course, just a reminder why James, Ellie and Wayne have all donated their time today is so hopefully you can give something towards these worthy causes in Restart and the Injured Player Foundation. To make a donation of up to £20, please text Rugby Call, that's all one word, Rugby Call, plus your donation amount to 70085. Each text will cost you your donation amount plus one standard message. So just that example again, if you want to donate £10, it would be Rugby Call, all one word, 10 to 70085. I think we're just about done there, guys. James, Ellie, Wayne, thank you very, very much for your time. I could carry on speaking about dogs and mental health and everything for hours more, but we're going to have to call it a day. Thank you all very much for participating.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
That's it for Rugby Call this time from England Rugby. We shall see you next time.